Welcome back to my kitchen. It's another Tasty Tuesday, and I'm sharing with you a great fall recipe today. And in fact, it's a great recipe for the holidays. We're going to make pierogi from Poland. Now, I loved the country of Poland. I loved the people, I loved the food. The history was amazing, both ancient history and the World War II history. And Poland is a country, like several Eastern European countries, that has been occupied. The borders have changed. It's just been kind of all over the place. And the people of Poland have kind of become sort of c'est la vie to whatever is happening next as far as leadership and borders, and they're just kind of go about their business, and yet they're incredibly welcoming and kind, and they have an amazing cuisine. Pierogi, the national dish of Poland. I took a pierogi class, and we also did a pierogi food tour. And both were really fun. And in fact, on my YouTube description, where I'll put the recipe, I'll share with you a link to the pierogi blog I wrote after my 3 weeks in Poland. So I've only made this once before, so we're kind of doing this again, winging it. But pierogi there are a couple of traditional kinds, and today we're making a potato and cheese, which is one of the traditional kinds. Also, on Christmas, pierogi is often served stuffed with cabbage or sauerkraut. I'm going to make a few of those today, and this recipe makes 40 pierogi. We're going to have a few of them for our dinner tonight, and I'm putting the rest, before I cook them, before I boil them, into the freezer for Christmas Eve with my family coming up. Also, regarding Christmas in Poland, it's traditional to have 12 different foods at Christmas Eve, and they eat their Christmas Eve meal when the first star is visible in the sky. And the other really cool thing about Poland's Christmas Eve traditions is that they always leave an empty place at the table. So a setting is placed with a chair, and this goes way back to pagan times, and they still do it today. And if someone in need comes to the door, they are welcomed at their table. That just gives me goosebumps. Can you imagine Americans doing that? It probably would never happen. But this is what I was telling you about the fantastic people of Poland. I loved that country, and I hope to go back. Let's get cooking. So you need to boil your potatoes before you make the dough, because you need to reserve 1 cup of the water from your boiled potatoes. So I have boiled 5 Yukon Gold potatoes. I had various sizes, but I have a total of 5, and I haven't mashed them up yet, but I'm going to mash them with 3 cups of cheddar cheese, and half a cup of milk. I'm using whole milk, but you don't have to use whole milk. And 1 teaspoon of sea salt, and freshly ground black pepper. It's almost like just making mashed potatoes. So I'm not using a mixer for this. I'm gonna mash these by hand. Might take a little effort on my part. And then I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to make the dough. So I'll come back and show you how I do that, and we'll finish mashing the potatoes. I'll be right back. Okay, our mashed potatoes with cheddar cheese is done, and now we're going to make the dough. So in this bowl, I have 5 cups of all-purpose flour and 1 teaspoon of sea salt. And I'm going to make a well in the middle, and to this we are going to add 2 whole eggs. Well, you can beat them if you want. 2 eggs, and we are going to add 1 tablespoon of softened butter, And we're going to add, I've got this cup, 1 cup of water from boiling the potatoes. We're going to add this just a little bit at a time and begin to work the dough with our hands. And we want to make sure the dough is not too sticky, but we also don't want it too dry. So you're just going to do a little bit at a time and test it out. You need to allow enough time because this dough will need to sit in the refrigerator for 20 minutes before we cut out our little pierogis. So I took a class in Poland where I learned to do this, and it was really wonderful because the woman teaching the class was a college student, and she lived in an apartment from the communist period, and it was just so neat to be able to go in and see these little apartments. It was very tiny, but back in the day, a whole family would have lived in this apartment, but she lived there alone. Also, pierogi, I mean, you can go to a pierogi restaurant and there can be all kinds of fillings, including meat, but one of the popular ones is berries for a dessert pierogi. I, of course, well, I like dessert, but I am much more of a savory person, and so trying all these different flavors was just really fun. And I just really found that not just pierogi, but lots of other great food in Poland. It looks like I'm gonna probably end up using most of this potato water and maybe even need to add a little bit more. So I'm gonna continue to work this and I'll come back and show you how it looks. My pierogi dough, it was a little bit dry after 1 cup of potato water. So I added maybe 1/4 of a cup of water, and now I have a really nice workable dough. So, you know, like with anything, you just kind of got to see how it comes together. So I'm kneading it now. You don't need to knead it too much, but I want to get it smooth, and then I'm going to wrap it in cellophane and put it in the fridge for 20 minutes. And then I'll come back and show you how we cut out the little pierogis. Hi, so our dough was in the fridge for 20 minutes and I've divided it into 4 pieces. I have the other 3 pieces here under cover. I'm trying to keep them from drying out. And now I'm gonna roll out my first 1/4 of dough and try to get it as thin as possible, but without losing too much of the structure. One of the things that I think is hardest about this is getting the dough, when you're making the pierogi, making sure that you have to really, you don't want any holes. Because when you put it in the boiling water, then all your filling will come out. And when I did this before, that to me was the most difficult part. So you want the dough thin enough because you want it light and lovely when you boil these. And some people actually fry them. Some people boil them first and then fry them. But we're gonna boil them today, which is the way I learned to do it. And so let's get this worked out, and then we're going to make just 1 batch for starters, and then I'll make the rest later today, and we'll come back and I'll show you what it's like when we serve. So let me see if I can get this a little bit thinner. I should get, did I say this already? I should get about 40 pierogi out of this recipe. So 10 per 1/4 of dough. And I'm not quite sure if I'm gonna get 10 out of this, so let's just go a little bit more. But we're learning, aren't we, together? We're learning how this works. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. let's give it a try for the first round. I have a cookie sheet here too, and that's what we're gonna put our finished pierogi on. All right, so I have a glass. You can use a cutter or a biscuit cutter. I have a biscuit cutter, but I couldn't find the darn thing. So we're gonna try this. And see if we can get them. Oh, I don't know if that glass is gonna work. Oh yeah, I just gotta push harder. All right. So, all right, so I'm gonna pop these off and come back and show you how we fill them. All right, so I rolled out 2 of my 4 quarters of dough, and it feels a little tough to me, but you know what? I'm new at this. So with each round now, we're going to work it, put it in the palm of my hand, and get a little bit of an indentation here. Now, I have my mashed potatoes here, and I've got, I'm gonna put not quite a tablespoon into each one. You just kind of want to, this is actually, I think that's a teaspoon and a half. So you're gonna just need to eyeball it because it's really important that you don't overstuff it. I've got a little bit of water here, sticking my fingers in there, putting a little bit of water around the edges, and then I'm going to manipulate this to close it up like that. Pinch the edges together, and when I'm sure that I've got all my edges together, then I'm gonna go and do a little bit of a decorative edge. Now, a Polish grandmother would probably be horrified at my decorative edge. I need some work on that. But, boy do I need some work on that. But I'm doing the best I can. And actually, I think it doesn't look so bad. So now I'm going to do the rest of them. Actually, I pulled out a little bit of sauerkraut, our homemade sauerkraut. If you haven't seen our YouTube on how to make sauerkraut, go back and check our YouTube channel for that. And let's make one with our homemade sauerkraut. And Arnie and I will try that with our dinner tonight. So that's about just a little less than a tablespoon. I'll close this one up. So pierogi, or something like it, you can find in so many countries. I have taken an empanada class in Argentina, and I've learned to make dumplings in Korea and in Taiwan. And so the premise is very much the same. The dough is a little different in each of those things that I just mentioned. But the idea of stuffing a little piece of dough of some kind with some yumminess is really all the same. And when I learned to make Chinese dumplings, we spent a lot of time on making the dumpling beautiful, which in Asian countries, presentation is so important. But like anything, you need to practice a lot. So here's one sauerkraut one, and now I'm going to finish all this, and then I'll show you how we boil them. Most of these are going in the freezer, but the ones we're having for dinner tonight, I'll come back and show you how we boil them. Hi everybody. Okay, so we have our pierogi ready to go into the boiling water, and you don't want to crowd your pan. I have what I would call a low boil going here, and I'm going to put each one individually in. It's only going to take, I don't know, minutes or so, what we're looking for is for them to float to the top. So I'm going to put 4 or 5 in at a time. And hopefully I have them all sealed really well. I'm going to turn this down a little bit more. Don't want a real hard boil. Okay, there's 4. I'll put a small one in there. Okay, so now we wait for them to float to the top. Meanwhile, in this pan, I have some onions caramelizing in butter because this is going to be our garnish, and very common on the savory pierogi to garnish with caramelized onions. Okay, can you see them? I don't know that you actually can, but I've got one almost coming to the top. Come on, buddy. I was unable to make them all identical in size, and I think that probably comes with practice. The other thing I learned is that the dough I wasn't using, I put back in the refrigerator, and instead of keeping it covered on the counter, that really helped a lot for rolling out the dough, keeping it cold. So that's what I did, wrapped up in cellophane in the refrigerator. All right, we have 2 that are floating, waiting for the other ones to come along. All right, I'm going to take this one out. He definitely is ready. Again, I'm a little worried my dough was kind of tough, but since I'm just learning the craft, I will experiment again next time. There's 2 that are floating. Okay, that's what we do. Can you see them? Beautiful little pierogis there. Now I'm going to put the other 5 in, and then I'll come back and show you how we plate them. Here we go. Our beautiful pierogis. We have the potato and cheese pierogi and the sauerkraut pierogi, topped with caramelized onions and sour cream. Serving it tonight with a little bit of cucumber salad. Really a fun fall dish, and also it will be great for my Christmas Eve with our family. So, pierogi from Poland, one of my favorite countries and one of my favorite cuisines. And pierogi is really pretty easy. You just gotta practice. So I hope you'll try it, and I hope I'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks for joining me. Bye.